Wait a minute. I gotta come back in. I've got camera.
Hello.
I just gotta click. Hi.
All right, I think we have a quorum.
I gotta come back in. I've got camera.
Why don't I give just another minute?
Dan.
I just gotta click.
Yes.
Hi.
Dan,
Yes.
if I have
Can
to
you hear me?
leave, would you lose, if I have to leave, would you lose the quorum?
No.
Would you be able to conduct business?
All right, I think we have a
Okay.
quorum. Right now we have 7 of 9.
I gotta come back in. I've got camera.
We have 7 of 9.
Why don't I give just another minute?
Dan.
I just gotta click.
Yes,
Hi, Dan.
Gara, they have not.
If I have to
Can you hear me?
leave, would you lose, if I have to leave, would
So why don't we
you
get
lose the
started,
quorum?
everyone? Welcome to a meeting of the Council
Would
on
you be able
Elementary
to
and
conduct
Education,
business?
Secondary Education. All right, I think we have a quorum. This is getting better at it. We have 7 of 9 on this 27th day of May 2020. I hereby call to order the meeting of the Council on Elementary and Secondary Education. Just a couple of ground rules as we've gone through before. To help with the efficiency of the meeting, if you could just wave your hand, I can see pretty much everybody on the screen here. If I can or I don't react, it's only because I can't see you. So just don't be bashful and chime right in. We'll get to you. Do not use the chat function, please, has been told to us in the past. And I guess there is a way for you. I think Angela has included it in the email. If something's happening technically, you can sign in or you can call in using an audio function that's in the email. So without further ado, let's get going with the agenda today. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and now we have to go through roll call to vote. So Angela, can you do the roll call on voting on this, please?
Amy Beretta,
Aye.
Colleen Callahan,
Aye.
Barbara Cottom, Karen Davis,
Hi.
Sarah Field, Joey Gaines,
Aye.
Lauren Griffith, Martha Martinez,
Aye.
Danielle McConaughey,
Aye.
Lawrence Curto.
Aye. Okay, motion passes.
Sorry, I didn't
So our
approve
first
right
one-
away. Did you get that I'm here? Sorry. I'm not usually included in attendance, so I wasn't ready.
Yeah, no, we're doing the voting on the agenda, so good. Okay, open forum to help with the efficiency of the meeting. We strongly encourage individuals to send in their comments to provide their thoughts on what we're discussing today and voting on. They have been distributed, Angela, I understand, to everyone, including up to latest note that was sent out. And no one signed up, I guess, to do verbal comments. So everybody has submitted, who had comments, submitted via email or other forms and have been distributed to everyone. So we've all had the benefit of reading those. So we'll move on to our discussion item. Our only discussion item this evening is the necessity of school construction projects for Burrillville, Cranston, Cumberland, Newport, Warwick. At this time, I do have to recuse myself from this discussion and from voting on these projects, as my employer may be working within or chasing these projects, and I need to recuse myself from them. But I'm now going to turn it to Christine Lopes-Metcalf, Wright, CEO of the School Building Authority, who will give us an overview of the process and answer any questions that you may have. Christine?
Thank you, Chairman. So thank you all for being here tonight. What we did is this is a follow-up discussion from our last meeting, from your last meeting, where we provided some information and highlights about the approvals that we're putting forth for, you've recommended for approval. What you have before you is some detailed information that you all received with the agenda, just the breakdowns of what we had highlighted and provided from last week or 2 weeks ago now. What I thought I would do is just do a few opening remarks and then actually leave time just for some discussion on any of the projects or anything that you'd like to ask both myself or Joe. Joe is online to help answer questions about the project specifically. Just wanted to emphasize both from our left to help for the discussion tonight was first just on the fiscal impact. So one of the inclusions that you had with the agenda was a fiscal impact. This is the second official one that we provided this fiscal year. The first one was in December when you all approved the Pawtucket project. From December's fiscal approval to now, we've actually seen a reduction. What we were projecting over a 5-year impact. And I raise this because it came up, I think, at the last conversation or in the conversations about the fiscal impact to the state of approving these projects. And so a few reasons why those numbers are a little bit lower now than they were back in December is because one community in particular that we had projected that may be coming before you tonight actually decided to pause their project and wait until a later time. So that reduced one of them by $80 million. Another is that we actually had some savings in the recommendations that we put before you. So some communities had asked for additional funding that wasn't approved for state funding or state support. And we're also seeing that timelines are shifting a little bit. People are taking a little bit longer to come in. All of this to say that the 5-year projections are that. They're a projection of the state's kind of fiscal impact, and it's all tied back to the pace in which local districts choose to move, which gets me into the process. What you have before you tonight is the recommendation to advance these projects based on each of the districts meeting the standards in our regulations for necessity of school construction. They have provided all of the documentation to the team who vetted it rigorously, had many conversations over months, if not years, with some of these communities to get them to this point. After tonight, if they were to advance, what happens next is that there's still local approvals that are needed for each of these projects. Cumberland is the only community that already has voter approval. They received approval back in November of 2018 for their project, but the other 4 communities still need to secure enabling legislation from the General Assembly, and then also their local approval from their town and city councils to advance forward. So that's the process. And so many of you know that the SBA team is very diligent in their reviews of these and feel confident with his recommendations. Oops, did you lose me?
Yeah, we did. We lost you a little bit in the last couple, or at least I did, a couple of sentences.
Okay.
Related on.
Sorry about that. I was just commending the team, the SBA team, so that wasn't intentional to lose me. Hopefully I'm back. Just that the team has spent months and years working with a lot of these communities to get these projects to where they are now. And so we're here to answer any questions you may have about the project. Joe, I'm not sure if you want to add anything else at this stage.
No, I'm fine.
So I think that's an important distinction that Christine has relayed to us, that our obligation is to move these along based upon their meeting the criteria that the school building authority has established for these different projects. It's really in the hands of the communities to decide if they want to proceed and move ahead with these projects. A lot of questions have come to light, and I think in some of the comments we've heard were submitted related to the veracity and the necessity of these projects. That's really at the committee's level, and I just wanted to be sure people understood that we're here to move these along as long as they've met the criteria and the standards that the school building authority has set forward. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware and understands what we're actually voting on tonight. So Karen, I see Karen, Colleen, and Amy. So Karen.
Yeah. So Christina, she went out. I think I just want to make sure that I understood.
Yeah.
So the communities vote. So it's not just that the local school boards make the decision. The communities actually vote.
Correct. All of these projects that we're advancing are bond related, so they require bond approval. Some of them do have capital reserve projects within them, but they all require a bond voter approval.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Colleen?
That was pretty much, I think, Christine, you went out right around that critical time.
I'm so sorry. My internet
No,
connection
that's
is shoddy all day.
No, and actually, it shows, Dan, I've gotten a little waiver. It says something about your bandwidth too, but so maybe lots of people are meeting right now. That could be it. Dan, so my understanding then, Christine, and it's very much what Karen asked, that the process then will include, other than Cumberland, which has already secured the okay from the citizenry, that, for example, the concerns that were raised and so forth with us, there will be local opportunity for that to, for those concerns to be raised, for votes to be taken, et cetera.
Right.
Correct.
That's right.
Thank you.
Amy?
Yeah, thank you. So that was in part my question. But I also, so you said there also needs to be enabling legislation from the General Assembly. Is that for all of these projects except for Cumberland?
Yes.
And is that, does that come before or after the local community approval?
The local community, the town councils have to advance it. My understanding is, and Joe, chime in if I've got it wrong, but is that the city councils actually request the enabling legislation happen, the General Assembly then enacts it. And then I think in some cases, the city councils may then take another vote to actually put it on the ballot.
Right.
Go ahead.
So it goes to the
Okay.
assembly first and then back to the town for them to put on their referendum either in November or some special vote later on.
Okay, so clearly my concern is that there is some local oversight and approval, but that there's someone looking at overall state dollars and especially what we're going through right now with the state budget and for the foreseeable fiscal years, the impact on the state budgets. I just want to make sure that our approval doesn't bind anyone, and that there is not just local oversight, but also state oversight over the actual commitment of dollars.
So I want to understand. So the recommendation tonight is about the council approving the state's commitment to these projects. It commits the state to funding its share of these projects, but there is still the need for the locals to approve their share and their portion of it. After, if all of those hurdles are achieved, the school building authority continues to have conversations and meets with the districts around their design reviews and to ensure that they're staying within the parameters. And that's, I'm not sure if that gets to the...
Okay, so, but then that doesn't mean that there's someone, we're the ones looking at it from the statewide perspective as to whether or not it is affordable and within the state budget at this time.
So our program is in, like, Joe, did you want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, no. The statutorily, the program is set up that the council promulgates regulations of necessity, and that once communities satisfy those regulations, then the council votes and determines that those projects are necessitated, and that it, in fact, if all the approvals move forward, this body is committing the state to the state portion that's outlined in the impact.
And so how long is this approval good for? So let's say we say, okay, we agree that, and I'm just throwing this out there as an example, we agree that Rogers High School, Newport needs a new high school. But in doing that, we're not saying that we're committing state dollars provided the city of Newport approves that project. We're not committing state dollars today.
Yeah.
How long is our vote good for? And does it expire at some point? If, let's say, the state finances don't rebound and we're making very tough decisions as a state, where does this fall in terms of priority commitment for funding?
So I might be able to answer this. So the approvals, if approved tonight, last for 5 years. So the communities have up to 5 years to complete these projects. The first is up to 6 months to get the voter approval, and then 5 years to commit to finishing the project. When the projects are finished, we then pay the state share over 20 or 30 years, depending on how those bond and financing. So the commitment that is made by the state is something that's carried over several years. And that's why you see on the 5-year fiscal impact that it comes a few years out. One of the things that's been added has been the statewide bond that was passed in 2018 to help kind of reduce some of that long-term debt by having some upfront dollars used for it. So I don't know if that helps, that it's not a commitment of spending, or that the expectation is that the General Assembly will have to allocate the funds for this in 1 year or this year or next year, that we'll actually start to see the impact of these projects in about 3 fiscal years, I think.
So I just want to comment on one item, and that is, should the voters vote down the referendum come November, then all these approvals would become null and void. So there is a contingency that the voters, for all these, that the voters have to approve these. Now, voters already approved Cumberland. And so by this approval, in fact, this is a commitment of the state to appropriate funds as distributed in that estimated impact statement. So you'll see that the first 3 years, we don't see a fiscal impact of these projects until FY23. And that's because we don't pay out housing aid until the project is completed. Then we pay it out pursuant to the bonding schedule. So it's not it's bonds are usually 20-year notes. So we're paying 1/20th of that for the next 20 years. So this is a long-term commitment. Should the voters proceed and the district then follow the regulations and actually get it built and submit it on time, pursuant to the memorandum of agreement that we have with them.
And just one last question, and I'm sorry to take so much time. What happens, so Cumberland has already received voter approval, and we're being asked to approve, but what if, did Cumberland already get the bond for this project? They did.
Yes,
They got the
did.
voter approval for the bond, yes.
They did
Dan?
it backwards, didn't they, Joe?
Yes,
Yeah.
they did.
They took the
So
risk.
we didn't approve everything that they had submitted. There were a couple of things that were not eligible for state reimbursement. That's why it's a different number.
Okay. Karen was next, and then Joeva.
So I live in South Kingstown, and as I understand it, South Kingstown has decided not to move forward. Is that right?
They're still in our pipeline. My understanding from the conversations is, I don't know if if there's been a local recent activity, but the conversations we've had with the superintendent is that they were anticipating a fall approval. So a stage 2 would come in the fall. I don't know if things have changed in the last week.
I might have a different understanding. So really, I think the point, where my discomfort is that have we had any feedback at all from the treasurer, given where we are? I mean, we're in such a different place when all of this certainly was done with all the right intent. And so the fact that the impact isn't felt until 2023, actually now, it's not all that comforting, right? Because 2023, we're still going to be, I'm sure, grappling with the impact of this pandemic on the state budget. So I'm just curious if the treasurer has provided any feedback, or his office.
I'm sorry. We've been in regular contact with his office, and I know that he's actually gone out and spoken at a number of local communities about this particular time. And the message that has been delivered is that the state actually in the coming years, granted, we know that we're in a lot of financial uncertainty right now about the operating budget, but as far as the borrowing side, that the state is coming into years where our debt capacity is reducing. And so this is an opportune time to start to have these conversations. And so he has been supportive of advancing these projects and keeping them on track because of the state's commitment to school construction. So we haven't gotten any indication from him otherwise. It's been supportive.
Okay, thank you.
Joeva?
It was my understanding that the state funds that are behind these projects were approved in the last election, and that that is the pool of money that is being applied to these 5 projects. And the treasurer's position was that the state has never backed down on a commitment, and the state has committed a certain amount of money for the existing projects that are underway. Is that wrong?
So part of the funding for these projects will come from the statewide bond. So the upfront dollars, each of the communities, and it's in your packets, will be offered a certain portion upfront. It's not the total state commitment, it's just a portion of the state commitment. The remainder of the state commitment actually comes in annual appropriations from the General Assembly once the projects are complete, and that's later on. And so it's a combination of funding. And even during the moratorium, the previous one, the General Assembly did approve and pay each year for all of the projects that have been approved.
Amy?
So if I may just add.
Go ahead. Yeah, finish the thought, Joe. Yeah.
So Christina references annual appropriation. And so in that impact statement that you provided, the projected housing aid in blue at the very bottom shows what the annual impact will be. So for this year, it's for this fiscal year, FY21, it's 79 million. Then 22 million in FY22, it's 8 million. FY23, it's 92 million. So, et cetera. These are annual appropriations that the General Assembly will need to fund should these projects move forward.
Go ahead, Amy.
And it does include past projects that we've been approving, that this body has approved previously, that are ongoing or have been completed.
So what would the consequence or ramifications be of delaying this approval process till the fall until we have a better idea of what the federal government's going to be willing to give Rhode Island in response to this COVID crisis, what our state budget's going to look like, to give us time to hear from the legislative leaders as to whether or not these are commitments that they want this board to undertake, to hear from the governor's office. I have a lot of concern about committing this kind of, believe me, I understand that the school construction is a necessity, but I'm also looking at a state that was not in great financial health before the crisis hit, is definitely not in great financial health now. And we are a very blue state and we have a Republican president. I don't know what kind of apportionment we're going to get of federal funds. Like, can we delay this till we at least have a better idea? I have an incredible amount of anxiety in committing the state to these kinds of financial commitments without knowing where we really stand right now.
There's a few things I'd add for consideration as you're all thinking about this. One is that a delay right now is that there are certain bonus incentives that were put into place for communities to do some of this work. And based on a recent conversation, or the treasurer had spoke at a city council meeting last week, that all indications is that there isn't any appetite to extend those deadlines. So actually delaying approval of some of these projects might further hinder some of the communities that are basing a lot of their financial decisions on those incentive bonuses. So that's one challenge with delaying. The other is that we're actually seeing construction bids, coming in lower than projected at this time. So this is actually, as far as an industry, I know it sounds challenging or maybe ironic, but this is actually an opportune time for districts to actually advance some of those projects. On top of, and the last thing I'd say is, we had gotten the direction to continue moving forward with school construction and the school construction projects for what you had mentioned. We know that there's a huge need. We know that both the need that we had for school construction before we went into this, and what will be needed on the other end of however distance learning and other things happen, is that the schools needed to continue these projects. And I'd also just add that, again, the next step for every community except for Cumberland is a General Assembly action. They are the ones that would advance this to go to the bond, to go to the ballot or not. And so I'd say that is another opportunity if there's any question from the General Assembly.
Let me just comment on it, because that's to Amy, your point. It's an excellent one, obviously. Is that, we're advancing these projects on the merit of what they've submitted and what they've done and all the work as they get through the next stages. That there are other checks and balances that will be along the way, like the legislature looking at this and then approving it to send back to the community, so that they, once again, another check and balance, can decide whether or not they're in a position to go ahead with the project, so that we're advancing these things, keeping these projects moving along rather than delaying them, but that there are ample checks and balances before dollars start going out the door. I think probably with the exception of Cumberland, which is already advanced. So that was my understanding.
Okay, so Joe had said earlier that no, we are the ones committing the dollars. So and that's what, it's very important for me before I take this vote to understand, are we committing the state dollars, or is that ultimately the legislature's function to decide to commit the state dollars? We're just saying that this project rises to the level that it's met the requirements and we're bringing it forward if the money is there to do it. And for me, that makes a big difference in terms of how I vote.
Exactly.
Colleen, did you have a question? No?
That actually was mine as well. It
Yeah.
seems to me that we're basing this approval on what we believe is our readiness to advance this to the next step, and that all of the projects except Cumberland would need legislative approval to go forward. So the concern about committing the state actually that we're not the final determiner of that, because it's going to go forward to the General Assembly. Is that right, Christine?
It does for enabling legislation, so I just want to make sure that we're clear on the council has the authority to approve the project based on the district meeting all the criteria and necessity. So you're proving that there has been proof that there is need in a solution that the state supports. If these projects were capital reserve projects, you would be binding the state to its commitments. However, these ones do include bond-funded projects, which then again have that next step to the General Assembly. So I just don't want to, I'm trying to balance you are committing because you're committing the state, but there is other steps in the process that even approving them tonight does not necessarily mean that they will come to fruition for a variety of reasons.
That's important. Thank you, Christine.
Yeah.
I'm Dan, trying to find the actual wording of what we're approving. Where is that? This is hard without a shared screen showing
The
us.
recommendation.
If you click onto the approval on your agenda, there's the approval documents. Once you get there, we're in discussion right now. There's links, and then there is a be it resolved at the very end, or recommended that the council approve, and for each community a certain dollar amount with the pay-go amount is there.
May I?
Yeah,
Dan,
I just want to make sure, hold on, Joey. I just want to make sure Karen's all set. Did you get your question answered, or?
I'm fine. I'm
It
looking
relates
for
to
it.
that.
Okay. Go ahead, Joey.
I think the very first line there, we are approving the necessity of the projects. I think that's key for this committee to realize. We are approving the necessity of school construction.
Per General Law 16-7-41.1.
And again, I want to be sure that none of these projects, other than Cumberland, which their community has dealt with, but every one of these projects has a need for bonding, and so it will have to go to the General Assembly, and the whole thing goes to the General Assembly,
Yeah.
not just that portion for which a bond is necessary.
No, what goes to the General Assembly is a request from the local municipality enabling legislation to warn and conduct a vote in November. That's what goes to the General Assembly. So they don't necessarily vote on these projects. They vote whether to allow the community to go into debt and also the state's commitment should it pass a voter.
With the dollar amount. So it's not just, it has the dollar amount built into that enabling legislation.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is that the capital portion of these projects do not go before the General Assembly.
For a formal vote. However, we are required to notify them as soon as the council votes to approve these projects. We're required to notify them of your approval. And they would get a copy of all of this material along with the fiscal impact statement.
Okay, so, but I'm still not, so I think what I've heard you say before though, is that we have now bound the state on the portion that, and so how much money is that?
So the Cumberland amount, all of that approximately 80 million, now that the voters have approved it and the General Assembly had approved the Enabling Act, that money would be a requirement if those projects move forward, or the state's commitment to those projects.
No,
I don't understand.
I don't think I'm being clear. So I understand that portion for which a bond is necessary has to go to the General Assembly, that then gives the community permission to put the bond out to vote. But that portion of what we're being asked to approve tonight that doesn't get bonded, but instead is a capital improvement, there is no one beyond us. We give approval and we have now committed state dollars to that project. What are those amounts of money?
Yeah, with the aside from Cumberland, they're really minimal amounts. I think it might be like $240,000, but it's actually a very minimal amount. All these 99% of this value is a bonded project.
They're contingent on their bonds.
Well, I'm looking at, let's look at Burrillville. I pulled up the recommendation on Burrillville, and we've got district-wide capital improvements of, I'm not a quick mathematician, but it looks to me it's over $7 million. Does that $7 million not have to be approved by the General Assembly?
Yeah, so that $7 million is a bond project. So they are going to voters for a bond on those. So those are also bonded projects, even though they're repairs.
Okay, do we have any information before us that tells us what the amount is?
So only 214,000 are capital reserve projects. So of the 7 million, if you go to the summary sheet, in double asterisk, it says approval includes 7 million bond funds and $214,000 in capital reserve funded projects. So the amount is 214,000 in capital reserve projects for Burrillville.
Cranston is a 100% bond funded. They did not include anything that would not require capital. I'm just going also through all of them. Warwick was also 100% bond funded, and Newport is 100% bond funded.
Larry?
Yeah, my concern is if we put this off, the vote tonight off to the fall, a couple of things are going to happen. The money, I know not all the money is being used, came from the vote in November of 2018, but Rhode Island voters approved a lot of money to go into school construction a year and a half ago. And with that came from incentives bonuses that districts could lose. So if they'll lose that if we don't decide, because they can't vote for local bonds if we wait till the fall. And the second thing is, and I think Christine said it earlier, construction costs and interest rates ever been probably ever going to be. So if we put probably ever going to be, costs are going to be for districts are just going to increase. And I'm afraid some of these districts will then put off much needed construction. So I'd be opposed to any delay in the vote.
I appreciate you, Joe, you taking and Christine taking us through that, because so it's really in total $214,000 that we're committing that doesn't get approved by the General Assembly.
Barbara?
That is correct.
That's what it looks like, yeah.
Is that in total?
So if the general,
You'd only be responsible for a share of that. Of 50, approximately 50% of that money.
so we need to remember too, that there's a safe gap that if the General Assembly doesn't want to commit the funds, they don't have to vote for it. And the General Treasurer has also said that he supports this and has taken a look at it, right, Christine and Joe, in that the state can handle this.
Yes, that's been his comments. Yep.
I think one of the key factors in our decisioning.
Okay. We're getting a lot of feedback. So any other questions, comments of our team?
I appreciate you guys taking me through it, because now that I understand that the legislature has to approve everything but for half of $214,000, I am fine with it. I just got nervous, and I think rightfully so, when Joe talked about the fact that we were committing state dollars. But in actuality, it's a very small amount that we are committing. We are really just approving the necessity of these projects for decisions on finance to be made by the General Assembly and the local community. So I am fine with it, and I appreciate you taking me through that so that I understand it better.
Colleen?
Unmute thing. There we go. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think Joe Weaver is probably the person who pointed out, I've gone back and looked at the wording of our recommendations, and I do agree that the emphasis is on, we basically certified, if you will, that these projects are worthy of going forward. So I think those two things together, that's what we're attesting to. And with the checks and balances that have been spoken about, and then in the greater context of, the concerns around possibly losing out on incentive funds, I'm comfortable as well. Thank you. Again, I agree with Amy. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Christine.
Okay, if there's no other comments, we'll move through each of these. It will take a few moments because we have to go through the roll call, so bear with me. But okay, so our action items, we're going to start with the Burrillville School Department. The recommendation that the Council for Elementary and Secondary Education approves the necessity of school construction projects for the Burrillville School Department totaling $7,214,000 pursuant to RIGL 16741.1 as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call, Angela?
Amy Beretta,
Aye.
Colleen Callahan,
Aye.
Barbara Cottom,
Aye.
Karen Davis,
Aye.
Sarah Peel, Joey Gaines,
Aye.
Marta Martinez,
Aye.
Danielle McConaughey,
Abstain?
Lawrence Squirtle.
Aye. Yes.
Okay, motion passes. We'll move on to the second, Cranston Public School District. Recommendation that the Council for Elementary and Secondary Education approves the necessity of school construction projects of the Cranston School District totaling $146,822,931 pursuant to RIGL 16741.1 as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Amy Beretta, Colleen.
Aye.
Aye.
Barbara Cotton.
Aye.
Karen Davis,
Aye.
Sarah Field, Joey Gaines,
aye.
Marta Martinez,
Aye.
Daniel McConaughey,
Abstain.
Lawrence Turtle.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Cumberland School Department next. Recommendation that the Council for Elementary and Secondary Education approves the necessity of school construction projects for the Cumberland School Department totaling $79,093,500 pursuant to RIGL 16741.1 as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Amy Beretta,
Aye.
Colleen Callahan,
Aye.
Barbara Cotton,
You're muted.
Barbara Cotton,
Aye.
Karen Davis,
Aye.
Sarah Field, Joey Gaines,
Aye.
Marta Martinez,
Aye.
Daniel McConaughey,
Abstain.
Lawrence Turtle.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to Newport Public Schools, recommendation that the Council for Elementary and Secondary Education approves the necessity of school construction projects for the Newport Public Schools totaling $106,334,967 pursuant to RIGL 16741.1. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Amy Beretta,
Aye.
Colleen Callahan,
Aye.
Barbara Cotton,
Aye.
Karen Davis,
Aye.
Sarah Field, Joey Gaines,
Aye.
Marta Martinez,
Aye.
Daniel McConaughey,
Abstain?
Lawrence Turtle.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Last one, Warwick Public Schools, recommendation that the Council for Elementary and Secondary Education approves the necessity of school construction projects for the Warwick Public Schools totaling $56 million pursuant to RIGL 16741.1 as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Amy Beretta,
Aye.
Colleen Callahan,
Aye.
Barbara Cotton,
Aye.
Karen Davis,
Aye.
Sarah Field, Joey Gaines,
Aye.
Marta Martinez,
Aye.
Daniel McConaughey,
Abstain?
Lawrence Turtle.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. So we move to the adjournment of this move. This concludes this afternoon's business. Next meeting of the Council of Secondary Education is on Tuesday, June 5:30. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting of the Council on Elementary Secondary Education?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Amy Beretta,
Aye. Aye.
Colleen Callahan,
Aye.
Barbara Cotton,
Aye.
Karen Davis,
Aye.
Sarah Field, Joey Gaines,
Aye.
Marta Martinez, Daniel McConaughey,
Aye.
Lawrence Turtle.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Meeting's adjourned. We'll see everyone at 5:30.
See you then.
Except me, Dan.
See ya.
Thank you.
Dan,
Yes.
I won't be there.
Yeah, no, I understood. No problem.
Okay.
Good luck.